Hey guys, welcome back to another Battlefield 6 comparison video where we go over the most important changes that were made with the last update, how they affect your gameplay and what they look like compared to the version before the update. So you know what has actually changed and what these changes look like. And we're gonna start with the visibility. This is probably the most noticeable change in the update, and when compared to the visibility that we had before, you can see that the soldiers have gotten kind of a glow, mostly by improving the contrast and silhouette. And overall, this makes visibility a lot better, especially in dark environments, but also in bright outdoor areas. And it also seems to be a lot more consistent between close and long range now. What was also adjusted a little bit are the hit indicators, so the ones you see when you are hitting someone. And here, according to the patch notes, they have been made less intrusive, use improved animations, sit further from the crosshair or sight, and remain more visible on bright backgrounds. And yes, the animation has slightly changed, but only for the kill marker, not for the hit markers, because now it opens up a bit wider than before, right after the kill was done, but then quickly gets smaller before they disappear. So it looks a bit more dynamic overall. And the visibility of the normal hit markers on bright environments was also slightly improved, so you can see them a little bit better. However, I don't feel like they're less intrusive or sit further from the crosshair. So this seems to be pretty much the same, at least as far as I can tell. So it's really only a small change and not as big as it seemed to be in the patch notes. Same also goes for the next point, where the patch notes said that the new burst fire attachment that had been added to the game with the start of Season 3 now applies its effects only to burst fire modes on the GRT, UMG, PW5, CZ3, SG553 and the Quad. So almost all the weapons where it is available. And the patch notes further say that this change was made to ensure that the attachment has the intended impact on weapon performance. So I did test this attachment shortly after it was released a few weeks ago, and back then I couldn't find any significant difference between using this attachment or not using it, at least on the weapons that already had burst fire before. The only noticeable effect was on the GRT and the SL9. So I tested the weapons again after the most recent update, thinking that something might be different now, because according to its description, the attachment is supposed to reduce horizontal recoil and make the vertical one more stable, and also slightly reduce recoil overall. But again, I couldn't find any noticeable difference in the recoil patterns of the weapons that already have burst fire when using them with or without the attachment. So here still, it's not worth using this attachment on weapons that already have burst fire by default, but it still has the same good effect on the SL9 and the GRT. An attachment that was actually changed though is the extended barrel that you can find on almost all weapons. Before the update, this was at 15 points and increased the projectile velocity while also having the same fast ADS time as the standard barrel. Now, after the update, it only costs 5 points, but has also lost its aim down sights benefit. So it only provides the faster projectile velocity now, and when it comes to the ADS speed, it's slightly slower than the standard barrel now. And the last attachment that was also slightly adjusted are some of the thermal optics. Here the exposure is now more consistently, which is supposed to reduce overexposure in the surrounding environment. And I tested it on 2 different optics, and on the Grim 1.5 there is no difference at all between the updates, but on the RDS Hybrid and probably on some others as well that I hadn't tested, it's definitely noticeable. So you can see that the surrounding environment is more visible now, but it also slightly reduces the visibility of targets. Moving on, we also have some gadgets that were changed with the update, and here the first one is the RPG that finally had its trajectory adjusted again. Because before the update, the zeroing range of the launcher was set to 100 meters, which means that when you aimed the crosshair directly at a target on this range, the rocket hit the exact spot you were aiming at. However, on close range, this often caused issues with rockets flying over the target target. And this was adjusted now, and the new zeroing range of the launcher is at 22 meters, which means on this range your rockets should go exactly where you are aiming at, but on longer ranges you now need to aim a little bit higher again to compensate the projectile drop. What was also adjusted again are the claymores. Here the patch notes said that the trigger range and fragmentation damage range have been unified at approximately 3 meters. And in game, this means that when you run through a claymore at around 3 meters, you will definitely trigger it, and you will also receive the maximum of damage again, which means that this change results in one-hit kills with the claymore again, because now it deals 100 damage within the area where it also gets triggered. And another small change is that if you should be sitting next to your claymore when it gets triggered, then you will not receive damage anymore. Before the update, you did receive a little damage. And another gadget that was changed is the sniper decoy. This now shows hit indicators when you shoot it to help reinforce the illusion of hitting a real soldier. But I feel like it also makes it easier for you to know when it is finally destroyed. And lastly, for the gadgets, we got some more changes to the portable mortar, with the most significant one being the reduction of its health from 250 down to only 50, which means that one grenade, one tank shell or a counter-strike from an enemy mortar will destroy it. Its replenish time was also increased from 10 to 30 seconds, and it can no longer be placed or equipped alongside the missile intercept system. So you cannot protect yourself from rockets or other mortar strikes anymore. What you can still equip and place next to it though is the normal grenade intercept system. And then lastly, we also have several changes and additions to vehicles. Here, all ground transport vehicles, so quad bikes, golf carts, armored transport, and the tanks as well, of course, now have crawl speed when using mouse and keyboard. Tanks had it before already, but the other ground vehicles did not. And the only exception from this is the dirt bike. You can still not crawl with a dirt bike. On tanks, this allows you to avoid triggering AT mines. However, on the armored transport vehicles, this doesn't. Here it simply gives you the ability to drive slower if you want to, but it doesn't have any additional benefit. And what was also changed for the armored transport is that it now takes damage from mounted heavy machine guns and from vehicle mounted light machine guns. So with a light transport, for example, or a stationary machine gun, you can now also destroy an armored transport. Next up, we have the mobile anti-air. This has received 2 new secondary weapons. It only had one before, so you didn't really have a choice, but now we got the high velocity rockets and the laser guided AA missiles in addition to this. The laser guided missiles have a smaller payload, but with a really good maneuverability, so you can follow moving targets for quite some time pretty easily. And the high velocity rockets, like the name suggests, have a very high velocity, a higher damage output, but are extremely limited in their guidance. So once they're shot, you're barely able to move them. So for fast moving targets, they're not really useful, but for hovering aircraft or against ground vehicles, they definitely come in handy. And at the end, we also have 2 changes directly to the aircraft. First of all, the radar system that could be equipped as a passive before the update is now a default and permanent ability for all aircraft. And to make up for this lost upgrade slot, at least on the attack helicopters, you can now find thermal optics that you can equip. These are not for the pilot, but only for the gunner seat, and will allow you to use thermal vision when you are aiming down sights. And the second change for the aircraft is that you can now set the minimap range between 400, 700 and 1000 meters instead of the maximum range of 400 meters that we had before. This allows you to expand your range of view and lets you see more of what's going on around you. Unfortunately, this change was only made for aircraft. The values for infantry and ground vehicles are still the same. And that was it for today. These were all the important and most significant changes that were done with the last update in Battlefield 6. And if you found this video helpful and you want to stay tuned for more content like this, then be sure to drop a like and subscribe, and I'm gonna see you in the next one. I'm the Catwoman and you are awesome.